It definitely seems like a really sketchy day here in the city of Newburgh, New York, but I'm gonna bring you a video about this Raleigh folding bike one way or another. It's definitely a unique looking bike from the back anyway. Let's look at it from the front though too. That's a pretty good shot. It shows you the city of Newburgh in the background. So let's start by determining when this bike was made. The rear hub is a Sturmey Archer dated 66-7, July 1966. The hub was made in the middle of 66, so let's say the bike was too. Fair enough. Here's your Raleigh head tube badge, which is missing its beak, and it's not quite a lug where the frame tube wraps around the head tube. It's sort of like a half lug or just a half wrap. Up here on the stem is this big oven knob looking thing, and that's part of the folding mechanism for the handlebars, so I'll look at that in a minute. The front view is pretty interesting. It's got your little fender, which is really heavily patinaed in a very pleasant way, and then your fork crown, which is just a tube. It's got some Raleigh decals on the sides, and the front brake, which is stamped steel Raleigh brake. This brake has something unique, which is this little wraparound wire that hooks around the fork, I guess to give the brake some more rigidity or something. Never seen that before. The front hub is a typical Raleigh hub with the little oiling cap in the middle. See this cap right here? Slides out of the way to reveal an oil port. Right there you can see the oiling port, so that's where you would oil your hub if you were so inclined. And while we're down here looking at the front end, I will point out that these little knobby tires probably did not come stock on this bike, but they look pretty cool. So up top you have what looks like 50 years of filth on the little slip cover that goes over the brake lever. And that's really gross. But it looks like whoever used this bike used the rear brakes a lot more than the front brakes, because the front brake is not so disgusting. And maybe my camera can focus, maybe it can't, but these little grips on the levers have a name on them. I think it says Dyke or Deke or something. On the back of the handlebar you can see how the original twist shifter was replaced by a thumb shifter, and I guess they just left the twist shifter in place instead of taking it off. The seat is all torn up, but it's branded Raleigh, so I'm going to assume that it's probably original to the bike. It's not too bad for 54 years old. And the seat post clamp has an early looking quick release. It's more of just like a nut with a handle on it rather than a traditional quick release, but it looks like it'll work all right. Now the pedals on the end have a little Raleigh logo, so I guess they're probably the stock Raleigh pedals. And the sprocket has the Raleigh swans that, unlike the head badge, aren't missing their noses. Now a lot of the time you can figure out what model a bike is by looking at the chain guard, because it'll have a logo on the chain guard. But as cool as this chain guard is with all the wear and patina, it really does not have a logo anywhere, not that I can see. Back here you can see the rear dropout and the cable going into the 3-speed hub, or the chain going into the 3-speed hub. It's not really a great high quality dropout, but it'll do the job. And from the side you can see that the rear brakes have the same little reinforcing doohickey as the front brakes. I wonder how well that actually worked. And of course a vintage folding bike wouldn't be anything without a rack on the back of it, so you could carry your books to and from class or whatever people did back in the 60s. This rack is okay. It's not like a Pletcher where it's got the spring-loaded thing, but it'll work. Back here you can see the fat rear fender, another Raleigh logo, and the surprisingly intact rear reflector. Usually those get broken off, but this one has survived. Here's an overview of the left side of the bike, and let's take a closer look at some of the features. Right here is a Raleigh nut and what looks like the serial number, and as far as I can tell it says 000210, but I'm not sure if that's right. So check it out for yourself. And just like an old Schwinn Varsity or something, this bike has a built-in kickstand. It's pretty cool. Above the bottom bracket, or perhaps comprising the bottom bracket, is this fairly unique boxy structure, which is a couple of plates, one on each side, and then some tubes that go all the way to the back of the bike. And above that is the folding lever, or the folding latch, and a really, really big blocky section of the main frame tube. And right here is a decal that I think says something about the design patent, but it's really hard to make out, so check that out. The head tube, well, not the head tube, but the headset has a little locking clamp underneath the headset nut, and that's right above the typical Raleigh headlight bracket. And back here is the handlebar pivoting mechanism, and we'll look at that in action in a little bit. Unfortunately, the front fender got a little bit toasted over the years, but it could theoretically be straightened if you didn't think that it looks awesome, and I think it looks awesome. With the bike upside down, you can get a better view of the whole latching mechanism and the support structure under there with the plates and the different braces and the hook. And back here is some evidence that U-brakes weren't just invented for mountain bikes in the 80s. That is an early looking U-brake. And look, it still works. Although I don't know how well it would work if you were careening down a hill. Oddly enough, I don't usually have a reason to fold folding bikes because they fit in the back seat of my car pretty well unfolded. But on this bike, I think you just have to push this release lever and then fold the frame. And it's that simple. And then as you fold the bike, the hook here hooks onto this little bar here, and now it's securely folded. Of course, having the bike folded like this doesn't make a lot of sense, because it doesn't seem to make the bike much smaller. But if I loosen the aforementioned knob, then we can fold the handlebars down, and that's what we're gonna do in just a second. And I'm gonna loosen this knob again so you can see the big spring that's underneath the knob. It's a pretty gnarly looking spring. So now I can fold the right side handlebar. Now I guess the bike is a little bit more folded. And I think this is the part where you're supposed to lower the saddle, but I can't get this quickly released, so I'm gonna leave it alone. And that is the Raleigh folding bike from 1966. This bike really triggers a reaction in people. I had about half a dozen people stop by and talk to me about the bike while I was making this video. And one guy even wanted to buy it. It's probably because it's such a beautiful bike and it's old and it's interesting and it's unique. But it's not for sale. It belongs to a friend of mine and I'm gonna give it back to him very soon. So until next time, from the city of Newburgh, thanks for watching.